I have a date tonight." That was all Nora Bennett said, but in Carter Westbrook's mansion, those 6 words hit harder than a bullet. The Chicago rain was crawling down the kitchen windows. The marble floors were cold beneath her worn heels, and the most feared man in the city suddenly forgot how to breathe. She was only the maid, the woman who cleaned his floors and kept her pain folded neatly behind quiet eyes. He was the Mafia king no one dared to challenge. But jealousy has a way of exposing truths that power can't hide. Tonight, one small lie will uncover 2 years of silence, desire, danger, and a love neither of them was supposed to want. Stay until the end, because this story is about more than romance. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. Those 6 words did not come from nowhere. Before Nora Bennett ever told Carter Westbrook she had a date before the kitchen went silent and the rain turned the windows black, there had been 2 full years of almosts. Almost glances, almost confessions, almost touches that stopped an inch too soon. 2 years earlier, Nora arrived at the Westbrook mansion with 1 suitcase, a thrift store coat, and a medical bill folded so many times the paper had gone soft at the creases. Chicago was still asleep when her cab pulled up outside the iron gates. The sky above the Gold Coast was the color of wet ash. Lake Michigan rolled in the distance, dark and restless, while the mansion stood behind its stone wall like something built to keep the world out and secrets in. The driver looked at the house, then looked at her in the rearview mirror. "You sure this is the place?" Nora held her purse tighter in her lap. Yes. He did not ask anything else, but his face said enough. Everyone in Chicago knew the Westbrook name. Some people spoke it with admiration. Some spoke it with fear. Most people lowered their voices before saying it at all. The gates opened before Nora pressed the call button. That was the first thing that unsettled her. Someone had been watching. She paid the driver with money she could not afford to spend, lifted her suitcase from the back seat, and walked up the long stone drive. Her shoes were thin. The morning cold bit through them easily. She kept her chin raised anyway because her grandmother had taught her that when life tried to make you smaller, posture was the first thing you fought for. The back entrance opened before she reached it. An older woman stood there in a gray cardigan, her silver hair pinned into a neat knot. Her face was lined, but her eyes were sharp enough to cut thread. "You're early," the woman said. "Nora Bennett. I'm here for the housekeeper position. I know who you are." "I said you're early." Nora shifted her suitcase to her other hand. "Early is safer than sorry." For half a second the woman looked amused. Then she stepped aside. "I'm Grace Miller. Everyone here calls me Mrs. Miller unless I like them. I haven't decided about you yet." Nora entered through the service hall. Warm air hit her face, carrying the smell of lemon polish, fresh coffee, and old wood. The corridor was spotless. Not clean in the way normal houses were clean, but polished until it looked untouched by human life. Mrs. Miller closed the door behind her. "You know what kind of house this is?" Nora looked down the hallway. At the end of it, a security camera turned with a soft, mechanical whisper. "I know the pay is weekly." Mrs. Miller studied her for a long moment. "That answer is honest enough to keep you alive here." Nora did not smile. Mrs. Miller led her through the staff wing, explaining rules in a low voice. No wandering in the East Hall after 9, no opening locked doors, no asking about guests who arrived after midnight. No repeating anything heard in this house, not to friends, not to family, not to priests, not to police. Nora listened to every word. She had spent the last year listening to doctors explain treatment costs, hospital administrators explain payment plans, and creditors explain consequences. Rules did not frighten her anymore. Unpaid bills did. Empty refrigerators did. The quiet after a funeral did. Mrs. Miller paused outside a small room above the garage. "This is yours." Nora stepped inside. The room was plain but clean. A narrow bed, a dresser, a lamp. One small window overlooking the side garden. To someone else it might have seemed sad. To Nora, it was the first door in months that closed between her and the world. She set her suitcase on the bed. Mrs. Miller watched from the doorway. "You have family?" "No." The answer came too quickly. Mrs. Miller noticed. She noticed everything. "Parents gone. Anyone I should call if you get sick or stupid?" Nora looked at the folded medical bill still peeking from her purse. "No." Mrs. Miller's expression softened, but only slightly. "Then don't get sick or stupid. I'll try. You'll do more than try in this house." Nora nodded. Mrs. Miller handed her a black uniform on a wooden hanger. "Change. Breakfast service begins in 20 minutes. That was how Nora's life at the Westbrook mansion began. No ceremony, no kindness dressed up as pity, just a uniform, a room, and work. She was grateful for all three. The first time she saw Carter Westbrook, she was carrying a basket of folded towels across the second floor. Voices rose from the foyer below. Male voices, hard voices, the kind that belonged to men who were used to being obeyed. Nora slowed without meaning to. From the balcony, she saw him standing beneath the chandelier. Carter Westbrook was not the tallest man in the room, but somehow every other man seemed arranged around him. He wore a black suit without a tie, his white shirt open at the throat. His hair was dark, his face clean-cut and severe, the kind of handsome that did not invite softness. It warned against it. A man with a red face was speaking too loudly. "You can't expect us to just step aside because you snapped your fingers." Carter looked at him. That was all. No threat, no raised voice, no movement toward violence. Just a look. The red-faced man stopped talking. His mouth remained half open, but no more words came out. Nora's hands tightened around the basket. Power, she realized, did not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply entered a room and waited for everyone else to understand. Then Carter's eyes lifted. They found her at the balcony. Nora froze. For one heartbeat, the mansion seemed to hold still around them. His eyes were gray, not soft gray like rain, but steel gray, cold and bright, and too aware. He did not look surprised to see her. He looked as if he had already known she was there. Nora dropped her gaze first. "Mrs. Miller appeared at her side without sound. "Careful," she murmured. Nora's cheeks burned. "I wasn't spying. In this house, intention matters less than appearance." Nora swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." "And Nora, yes, never stare at Carter Westbrook unless you're prepared for him to stare back." That night, Nora lay in her narrow bed and listened to cars coming and going beyond the garage. Doors opened. Men spoke in low voices. Somewhere in the main house, a piano played one slow line of music, then stopped. She told herself not to think about Carter Westbrook. She failed before midnight. Work filled her days quickly enough. The mansion had 37 rooms that needed attention, not counting staff quarters, storage spaces, wine rooms, and offices that could only be entered with permission. Nora learned the rhythm of the house the way other women learned songs. She learned which floorboards sighed near the library, which silver trays Mrs. Miller inspected with white gloves, which flowers Carter disliked in the dining room because their scent interfered with his coffee. She learned that Wade Harper, head of security, moved like a wall with a heartbeat. He had a scar under his left eye and a voice so quiet, people leaned in before realizing they should not have. He frightened most of the staff. He did not frighten Nora. The first time he came into the kitchen with split knuckles, Nora passed him a clean towel without comment. Wade looked at the towel, then at her. "You asking questions?" "No." "Good. You're bleeding on the counter." He took the towel. After that, Wade nodded to her when they passed in the halls. For him, it was practically a friendship. She learned that Miles Cross Carter's second-in-command smiled more than Wade, but meant it less often. He dressed like a lawyer, spoke like a gentleman, and watched rooms like a man counting exits. Nora never saw him lose his temper. That made her more careful around him. She learned that Mrs. Miller's hands ached in the cold, though the older woman tried to hide it. So Nora began taking the heavier laundry baskets before Mrs. Miller could reach them. She polished the upper shelves so Mrs. Miller would not have to stretch. She brewed ginger tea and left it near the ledger in the pantry. Mrs. Miller said nothing for a week. Then one morning she found Nora scrubbing the kitchen tiles before dawn. "You don't have to mother an old woman." Nora did not look up. "My grandmother said taking care of people is never wasted." Mrs. Miller was quiet for so long Nora thought she had left. Then she said, "Your grandmother raised you." Nora's brush slowed against the tile. "Yes." And now Nora kept scrubbing. "Now she doesn't need anything from me anymore." Mrs. Miller understood what that meant. Her voice softened. "What was her name, Evelyn?" "Pretty name. She was prettier." The words slipped out before Nora could stop them. Her throat tightened. She pressed harder against the tile as if grief were something that could be scrubbed away if she used enough force. Mrs. Miller did not touch her. Nora was grateful. Touch would have broken something. Instead, the older woman said, "Finish that corner, then come eat." It was the closest thing to comfort Nora could bear. Weeks became months. Nora learned to make herself useful everywhere. She cleaned offices, mended curtains, organized the pantry, repaired loose buttons on uniforms, and memorized the preferences of people who barely knew her name. She became efficient, quiet, invisible. At least, she tried to. Carter kept seeing her. He saw her in the library at 11 at night standing on a step stool with an armful of leather-bound books. "You're supposed to be finished at 7, he said from the doorway. Nora nearly dropped a volume of Marcus Aurelius. She climbed down carefully. The shelves were out of order. The shelves were out of order yesterday, too. Yes. And they survived. Nora held the book against her chest. "I prefer to finish what I start." Carter stepped into the room. The lamplight caught the sharp line of his jaw, the faint shadow beneath his eyes. He looked tired, but not weak. Nora doubted men like him were allowed to look weak. "You say that like it's a virtue. It usually is. Sometimes it's a punishment." She did not know what to say to that. He came closer, not enough to crowd her, but enough for her to catch the scent of his cologne. Cedar smoke and something darker she could never name. "What did you want to be?" "Nora Bennett." The question was so unexpected she forgot to guard her face. "What?" "Before this." No one in the mansion had asked her that, not directly, not like the answer mattered. She looked down at the book in her hands. A doctor. Carter said nothing. Nora hated the silence, so she filled it. "I had a scholarship." Then life happened. "Life," he repeated. She looked up sharper than she meant to. "Yes. Life." He studied her. Most people looked at Nora and saw a maid, a uniform, a pair of hands. Carter looked as if he saw the bruise beneath the skin. "I'm sorry," he said. That irritated her more than it should have. "Don't be. It doesn't change anything." "No," he said. "It doesn't." For some reason, that answer stayed with her. A month later, Nora found new work shoes outside her room. Black leather, practical. Her size, no box, no note. She stared at them for a full minute before bending to pick them up. The shoes were soft inside, sturdy at the sole, expensive enough that she knew no one in staff had bought them. She wanted to ask Mrs. Miller. She wanted to return them. She wanted foolishly to press them to her chest. Instead, she wore them the next day. By noon, her feet did not ache for the first time since she had started working there. That afternoon, Carter passed her in the hall. His eyes dropped briefly to the shoes, then he looked away. Not fast enough. Nora knew. She hated that she knew. After that, avoiding him became harder. Not because he sought her out openly. Carter Westbrook did not chase. He appeared. In doorways. At the end of halls. Beside windows when she thought she was alone. He asked small questions that felt too large. "Did you eat? Is Mrs. Miller's arthritis worse today? Why are you limping? Who taught you to fix a hem that cleanly?" Every answer Nora gave was careful. "Yes, a little. I'm not. My grandmother." He accepted each answer but never seemed satisfied by it. One winter evening, a snowstorm trapped half the staff away from the mansion. Nora stayed late to help prepare dinner for Carter and several men in the private dining room. She moved quietly between kitchen and corridor, carrying plates beneath the watchful eye of Wade. Voices drifted through the dining room door. A man said, "The South Side crew won't accept new terms." Carter answered calm and low. "They don't have to accept them. They only have to understand them." Another man laughed nervously. Nora kept walking. Later, as she carried a tray of untouched glasses back to the kitchen, the dining room door opened suddenly. A man stumbled out, pale and sweating. He nearly crashed into her. Nora stepped back. The man looked over his shoulder like he expected death to follow him. Carter appeared in the doorway. His expression was cold enough to change the temperature. The man saw Nora and straightened, embarrassed by his own fear. "Sorry," he muttered. Nora lowered her eyes. Carter's voice cut through the hall. "Apologize properly." The man froze. Nora's pulse jumped. The man looked at Carter, then back at Nora. "I'm sorry, miss." Nora nodded once. "It's fine." "It isn't," Carter said. The man fled down the hall. Nora stood very still with the tray in her hands. Carter looked at her. "Did he hurt you?" "No." "Did he touch you?" "He bumped into me. That wasn't what I asked." She met his eyes without meaning to. Snow tapped softly against the windows. Somewhere behind him, the men in the dining room had gone silent. "No," she said. "He didn't." Carter held her gaze a moment longer. "Good." He went back inside. Nora carried the tray to the kitchen with shaking hands. Mrs. Miller was there rolling pie dough. She did not look up. "You're learning." Nora set the tray down. "What that Mr. Westbrook notices more than he should." Nora turned on the faucet. "He notices everything." "No," Mrs. Miller said. "Not everything." Nora looked over. Mrs. Miller kept rolling the dough. "Just you." Nora did not answer. She washed the glasses until the water ran too hot over her fingers. By spring, Nora understood the shape of her danger. It was not that Carter was cruel to her. Cruelty would have been easier. It would have given her a reason to hate him. It would have built a wall she could trust. Carter was worse than cruel. He was careful. When he entered a room, his eyes found her before anyone else. When she carried heavy things, he noticed. When she avoided lunch, food appeared later. Not from him, never from him, but always, somehow, where she would find it. When a visiting councilman snapped his fingers at her, as if calling a dog. Carter ended the meeting 10 minutes later, and never invited the man back. Nora told herself those things meant nothing. Rich men could afford gestures. Powerful men enjoyed control. Lonely men sometimes mistook attention for affection. She repeated these explanations until they sounded almost believable. Then came the morning he called her into his office. Nora had been cleaning the breakfast room when Wade appeared near the archway. "Boss wants you." Her hand tightened around the cloth. "Did he say why?" No. Wade's face gave her nothing. Am I in trouble? He looked almost offended by the question. If you were, I wouldn't be this relaxed. That did not comfort her. Carter's office faced Lake Michigan. The windows rose from floor to ceiling, turning the water and sky into a moving wall of gray-blue light. His desk was dark wood clean except for a stack of folders, a silver pen, and a glass of untouched water. He stood when she entered. That unsettled her too. Men like Carter did not stand for maids. You asked to see me, Mr. Westbrook. Sit down. Nora sat on the edge of the leather chair. Not fully. Never fully. She kept her spine straight and her hands folded in her lap the way she used to sit in hospital billing offices pretending she was not afraid. Carter noticed that too. His mouth tightened. You've been here 2 years next month? Yes, sir. You've never called in sick. I haven't needed to. You've never requested a vacation. I have nowhere to go. The answer came out too honest. Carter leaned back against the edge of his desk, arms crossed. You work weekends. The house needs work on weekends. You take on Mrs. Miller's heavier duties. Mrs. Miller's hands hurt. You help in the kitchen when you're not assigned there. People need to eat. You organize the library after hours. The library is poorly maintained. At that, his eyebrow lifted. My library is poorly maintained. Nora realized what she had said. It was. For the first time, she saw amusement touch his face. Not a smile exactly. Something smaller and more dangerous because it made him look human. Then it vanished. You do the work of 3 people and get paid for 1. I agreed to the wage. I didn't ask what you agreed to. He picked up an envelope from the desk and held it out. Nora stared at it. What is that A raise? 25%, effective immediately. She did not take it. Why? Because it's overdue. I didn't ask for more money. I know. Then why give it to me? His gaze held hers. Because you need it. Heat rose to her face. Shame first, then anger. You reviewed my finances, no. But you know I need it. Nora. The way he said her name made the anger falter. He set the envelope on the desk between them as if placing a weapon down carefully. I know you send most of your pay to a medical creditor in Oak Park. I know because you asked payroll to split your direct deposit. I did not search your life, but I am not blind inside my own house. Nora looked away. Her grandmother's last hospital room came back to her in pieces. Thin curtains, plastic water cups, a machine that beeped all night. Her grandmother squeezing her hand and whispering, Go back to school when this is over, baby. But when it was over, there had been no school, only bills. Carter's voice softened. You shouldn't have to work yourself into the ground to pay for loving someone. Nora stood too quickly. I appreciate the raise. Nora. I should get back to work. Take a day off. She almost laughed. I'm sorry, tomorrow. Take it. I don't need a day off. That wasn't the offer. And this is not the Army, Mr. Westbrook. His eyes sharpened. No. It's my house, and I work in it. I don't belong to it. The words landed hard. Nora realized too late how they sounded. Carter went very still. For a moment, the office felt like the hallway the night the frightened man had stumbled out of the dining room. Quiet. Loaded. One wrong move from becoming something else. Then Carter looked away first. No, he said quietly. You don't. The softness in his voice unsettled her more than anger would have. Nora reached for the envelope because refusing it would have been pride dressed as stupidity. Thank you. At the door she stopped. A question rose in her before she could bury it. Why do you care if I rest? Carter did not answer right away. The city moved behind him, cars crawling along Lakeshore Drive, the water dark beyond the glass. When he spoke, his voice was controlled again. Every employee deserves basic consideration. Nora looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them believed him. She left before the silence could become confession. That night, Nora sat on the edge of her bed with the raise envelope beside her and her old medical bill in her lap. The room smelled faintly of laundry soap and rain. Through the window, she could see a sliver of the main house lit gold against the night. She should have been relieved. She was relieved. But beneath the relief was something more dangerous. Hope. Not the clean, bright kind people wrote about in greeting cards. This was a fragile, foolish hope with sharp edges, the kind that made a woman imagine things she had no right to want. Carter stepping closer in the library. Carter saying her name without caution. Carter looking at her not as staff, not as charity, not as a problem to be solved, but as a woman. Nora pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes. "No," she whispered. The word sounded weak in the quiet room. She stood and began folding the same sweater 3 times, just to keep her hands busy. Women like her did not end up with men like Carter Westbrook. They cleaned their houses. They served their coffee. They learned which doors stayed locked. They built small lives in the corners of powerful men's worlds and called it enough. That was survival. That was sense. That was safe. But safety had never looked at her across a library like it wanted to know every broken piece of her. The next morning, Nora took the day off because Carter had ordered it, and because Mrs. Miller blocked the laundry room door with her body. "Out," Mrs. Miller said. "I can at least finish the guest sheets. You can at least learn how to be 28 before you turn 80. I'm 26. Not the way you act." Nora tried to argue. Mrs. Miller pointed toward the back door. So Nora went into the city. She walked along the lake in a borrowed wool coat, hands deep in the pocket's hair whipping across her face. Chicago was loud around her. Buses hissed, dogs barked, joggers passed with red cheeks and expensive shoes. Life moved without permission, without locked gates, without men speaking in codes behind polished doors. For a few hours, Nora let herself be part of it. She bought a coffee she should not have spent money on and sat near the window of a small bakery in Lincoln Park. Across the street, a young couple argued over a stroller while laughing at the same time. A student highlighted a textbook. An old man read the newspaper with a magnifying glass. Normal people, Nora thought. Normal problems. She wondered what Carter was doing, then hated herself for wondering. Her phone buzzed. Paige Lawson's name filled the screen. Nora almost ignored it, but guilt won. "Are you alive?" Paige demanded the second Nora answered. "Hello to you too. You disappeared into that billionaire vampire mansion and now I only hear from you when I threaten to call hospitals. He's not a vampire, so he is a billionaire." Nora looked into her coffee. "Not the point." Paige made a thoughtful sound. "You sound tired." "I'm always tired." "That's not a personality, Nora. It's becoming one." Paige softened. "Come out with me Friday. There's a new wine bar in River North. Low lighting, overpriced platesmen who use too much hair product. It'll be healing." "I can't." "You can. You just hate joy. I work. You always work." Nora watched the couple outside lift their child from the stroller. The little girl reached both hands toward her father's face, and he kissed her palms like they were sacred. Something in Nora's chest ached. Paige kept talking. "You need a life outside that house. A bad date. A good drink. A story that doesn't involve polishing someone else's silver." Nora's reflection stared back at her from the bakery window. Pale face, tired eyes, hair pinned too neatly even on her day off. Someone who lived around life, not inside it. "I'll think about it," she said. Paige gasped. "That is the wildest thing you've said in 2 years. Don't make me regret it." "Too late. I'm emotionally invested." Nora smiled despite herself. When she returned to the mansion near dusk, Carter was in the foyer speaking with Miles. He stopped mid-sentence when she entered through the side hall. Nora still wore the borrowed coat. Her cheeks were pink from the wind. Her hair had loosened around her face. Carter looked at her as if he had forgotten other people were present. Miles noticed. Of course he noticed. Nora lowered her eyes. "Mr. Westbrook." Carter's voice was quiet. "Miss Bennett." Miss Bennett, not Nora. The formality felt like a door closing, but his eyes did not move away from her face. "Did you enjoy your day off?" he asked. Nora thought of the lake, the bakery, Paige's voice, the tiny taste of normal life. "Yes." "Good." Miles cleared his throat softly. Carter looked back at him, but the moment had already changed the room. Nora went upstairs to hang up the coat and remove the city from her skin. For 3 days after that, she tried harder to avoid Carter. She adjusted her schedule, cleaned his office only when he had meetings downtown, took the west stairs instead of the main hall, asked Mrs. Miller to send someone else with his coffee. Mrs. Miller allowed this for exactly 2 mornings. On the 3rd, she handed Nora the silver tray herself. "Take it. Isabella can take it." Isabella spills when she's nervous. She needs practice, not with Mr. Westbrook's coffee. Nora stared at the tray. Mrs. Miller leaned closer. Running is still movement towards something child. It just lets fear choose the direction. Nora did not appreciate that. She took the tray. Carter was in his office on the phone when she entered. His voice was low, his posture rigid. "I don't care what Bellamy wants. He can ask politely, or he can lose the privilege of asking." Nora set the coffee on his desk. She meant to leave immediately, but Carter caught her wrist lightly before she stepped away. Not hard, not possessive, just enough. Her pulse leapt beneath his fingers. He ended the call. "Are you avoiding me?" Nora looked at his hand. He released her at once. "No. Nora." She hated the way he made her name sound like truth was the only acceptable answer. "I'm working. You were working last week too. Somehow I saw you then." She folded her hands in front of her apron. "Maybe you're busier this week. Maybe you're a terrible liar." Her eyes lifted. That almost smile touched his mouth again. It was gone too quickly. She should have said nothing. She should have left. Instead, some reckless part of her spoke. "Would that bother you?" "Yes." The answer came too quickly, too honestly. The air changed. Carter looked as if he regretted the word the moment it left his mouth, not because it was untrue, but because it was not controlled. Nora took 1 step back. "I should get back to work." He nodded once. She left with her skin still warm where his fingers had touched her wrist. That evening, Paige called again. Nora was in the staff room folding napkins with more force than necessary. Friday, Paige said, "Wine bar, 7:30. Say yes before you remember you're allergic to fun." Nora looked through the open doorway. Down the hall, Carter passed with a woman at his side. The woman wore a cream dress, pearls, and the easy confidence of someone born knowing which fork to use and which senator to call. She laughed at something Carter said. Her hand brushed his sleeve. Carter did not move away. Nora looked down at the napkin in her hands. A foolish hot pain opened inside her. She had no claim, no right, no reason. That did not make it hurt less. Nora Paige said, "You there?" Nora folded the napkin once, then again. "I can't Friday." Paige groaned. "Don't do this to me. I have plans." The lie stepped onto her tongue, fully dressed. Paige went quiet. What kind of plans? Nora saw Carter stop at the far end of the hall. He turned his head slightly as if he had heard her voice. She should have lowered hers. She did not. "A date," Nora said. The hallway seemed to still. Paige screamed so loudly Nora had to pull the phone from her ear. With who? Nora's eyes stayed on Carter's distant figure. She saw him turn fully now. A delivery box sat on the table beside her, stamped with the name Porter Medical Supply. Nora swallowed. Evan Porter. Who is Evan Porter? Nora looked away from Carter. Someone I met outside the house. The words tasted like danger. Paige was laughing, thrilled, demanding details Nora invented with surprising ease. A teacher, kind eyes, dinner somewhere simple, nothing serious. By the time the call ended, Nora's hands were cold. She turned toward the hall. Carter was gone. But the air where he had stood still felt disturbed. Nora stared at the folded napkins, at the life she had just invented, at the name that had not existed 5 minutes ago. Evan Porter. A harmless lie. A necessary lie. A terrible lie. From somewhere deep inside the mansion, a door closed with enough force to make the silver on the shelves tremble. The sound of that door closing followed Nora through the rest of the evening. It was not loud enough to make anyone ask questions, but it was loud enough for the people who knew the house to understand that something inside it had shifted. Mrs. Miller looked up from the pantry ledger. Wade paused near the security monitor. Even young Lily Dawson, who was arranging clean glasses in the butler's pantry, went still with one crystal stem held between her fingers. Nora pretended not to notice. She folded the napkins again, though they were already perfect. She stacked them in a neat square. She smoothed the top one with her palm until the fabric lay flat as a sheet of winter ice. Evan Porter. The name sat in her mind like a stolen thing. She had never met an Evan Porter. She did not know if he drank coffee or tea, if he laughed loudly, or kept his voice low, if he had kind hands or cruel ones. She had invented him from a delivery box, a wounded heart, and the terrible need to know if Carter Westbrook could bleed. Now the whole lie felt alive. It had heard her speak. It had walked down the hall and slammed a door. Nora. Mrs. Miller's voice came from behind her. Nora turned. "Yes, ma'am." The older woman stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. "You're pulling the threads loose." Nora looked down. The napkin beneath her hand was twisted now, one corner wrinkled from the pressure of her fingers. She let go at once. "Sorry." Mrs. Miller walked in slowly. Her hands were stiff tonight. The cold had settled into her joints, though she would rather lose a finger than admit it. "You want to tell me why Mr. Westbrook just shut his office door like somebody put a match to his temper?" Nora reached for another napkin. "I wouldn't know. Child." Nora hated that word when Mrs. Miller used it softly. It made lying harder. "I told Paige I had a date Friday." Mrs. Miller's eyes narrowed. "And does Paige know this date exists only in your head?" Nora looked down. "No." "Does Mr. Westbrook?" Nora said nothing. Mrs. Miller exhaled through her nose, not quite a sigh, not quite a prayer. "You've been playing near a loaded gun and calling it candlelight." It was just a phone call. It was not just anything if he heard it. Nora's throat tightened. "He has no right to care." Mrs. Miller's face changed, then something gentle but tired moving across it. "No, maybe he doesn't." That answer was worse than disagreement. Nora turned away, picked up the stack of napkins, and placed them on the service shelf. "I'm going to finish the dining room." Mrs. Miller did not stop her. The dining room glittered beneath a chandelier big enough to shame a church. The long table had already been cleared, but Nora checked every place setting anyway. She moved around the room with practiced precision, adjusting chairs, brushing crumbs from invisible places, straightening candlesticks by a fraction of an inch. Work gave her hands something to do. It did not quiet her mind. She kept seeing Carter at the end of the hall, turning when she said the word date. Not angry at first. Not even cold. Just still. As if a part of him had stepped out of reach. The thought made her angry. At him. At herself. At the invisible line between them that both of them had spent 2 years pretending not to see. He could have women like the one in cream silk, women who knew how to stand beside men with power, women who did not smell faintly of bleach at the end of the day, women who did not measure the cost of coffee before buying it. And yet he looked at Nora as if she were a secret he could not solve. A voice came from the doorway. "Dining room looks fine." Nora did not turn. She knew that voice now. Low, flat, controlled. "Then I'm doing my job well." Carter stepped into the room. She felt him before she saw him the same way a room feels a storm before the windows shake. "You have plans Friday?" It was not a question. Nora picked up a water glass and inspected it. "Yes, with Evan Porter." Her hand tightened around the glass. "Yes." "Interesting." She set the glass down carefully. "What is... I know most men in this city who matter. I've never heard of him." Nora turned then. The chandelier light cut shadows under Carter's cheekbones. He wore his jacket open and his sleeves buttoned at the wrist, every inch controlled except for his eyes. "Maybe he doesn't matter to your city." Carter's gaze sharpened. "But he matters to you." The question was too quiet. Nora lifted her chin. "He asked me to dinner. That's all. That's never all. It is to normal people." A muscle shifted in his jaw. "Is that what you want?" "What normal?" Nora could have answered truthfully. She could have said yes sometimes. She could have said no, not since him. She could have said she did not know anymore. Instead, she said, "It sounds peaceful." For the first time, Carter looked away. The small victory tasted bitter. He walked to the head of the table and rested one hand on the back of his chair. "Where is he taking you?" "I don't see why that matters. If you're leaving this house at night, it matters. I leave this house every week, not dressed for a man." Her face went hot. "That is not your concern." His eyes returned to hers. "No, no." The word shook more than she wanted it to. Carter heard it. Of course he did. He came closer slowly enough that she had time to move away. She did not. Pride pinned her to the floor. "You should be careful who you trust, Nora. Is that advice from my employer? It's advice from a man who knows what men want." "And what do you want, Mr. Westbrook?" The question left her lips before fear could stop it. The room seemed to empty of air. Carter stood close enough now that she could see the faint shadow of exhaustion under his eyes, the controlled anger in the set of his mouth, the restraint in his hands as he kept them at his sides. His voice dropped. "Don't ask me that in a room where I'm trying to behave." Nora's heart slammed once hard. She looked away first. "Then let me finish my work." For a moment he did not move. Then he stepped back. "Good night, Miss Bennett." Miss Bennett again. The name cut more sharply than Nora expected. "Good night, Mr. Westbrook." He left the dining room without another word. Nora stood alone beneath the chandelier, breathing like she had run through rain. Friday arrived gray and restless. By morning, every sound in the house seemed too loud. The coffee grinder, the ring of Carter's phone behind his office door, the soft click of Wade's shoes as he crossed the marble hall. Nora felt watched, though no one openly stared. She dressed in her uniform and pinned her hair smooth. She told herself she would say nothing more about the date unless asked. Carter asked before 8. She found him in the kitchen, standing by the counter with his coffee untouched. Again, he was not supposed to be there. The staff kitchen belonged to ordinary things: steam, bread, metal spoons, Mrs. Miller's radio playing old soul songs low enough to be denied. Carter looked wrong inside it, too dark, too polished, too dangerous for the chipped mug cabinet behind him. Nora stopped in the doorway. "Good morning." His eyes moved over her face. "Good morning." She crossed to the coffee pot because doing anything else felt impossible. Mrs. Miller was nowhere in sight. Nora suspected betrayal. Carter watched her pour. "You're leaving on time tonight." Yes. The coffee stream trembled once, then steadied. He noticed. 7. My shift ends at 6:30. But you usually stay until 8. Tonight I don't. He was silent for so long she could hear the clock above the pantry door. Then he said, Is he picking you up? No. Why not? Because I can get myself where I'm going. Nora. She turned cup in hand. What? His control cracked for only a second, but she saw what waited underneath. Frustration. Jealousy. Something wounded enough to make her own anger weaken. He should come to the door. A laugh escaped her, soft and stunned. So you can inspect him? So I can know who you're with. You don't get to know everything. His face hardened. In my world, not knowing gets people killed. In my world, being controlled kills something too. The words hung between them. Carter's eyes changed. Not anger now. Recognition. Nora set the cup down. I'll be back tomorrow morning. I won't be late. That's not what I'm worried about. What are you worried about? He looked at her then, and the truth came close enough to touch. Before he could answer, Wade entered through the side door. He stopped at once. His gaze moved from Carter to Nora and back again. Bad time, Carter picked up his coffee. No. But the word had teeth. Nora slipped past Wade and left the kitchen before her courage failed. The day dragged. Carter became a ghost inside his own house. Nora heard him but rarely saw him. Doors opened before she reached the hall. Conversations stopped when she came near. Once she passed his study and heard glass break inside. Not shattered exactly, cracked against something hard. Miles appeared at lunch with a calm smile and dangerous eyes. Nora. She was arranging flowers in the front sitting room. White roses. Carter hated lilies. Yes, Mr. Cross Miles is fine. It isn't. His smile deepened. Fair enough. He leaned against the doorway as if they were old friends. You have plans tonight. Nora kept trimming stems. People keep saying that like it's a crime. In this house, everything becomes business eventually. My dinner is not business. No, but the boss's mood is. She looked up. Miles was still smiling, but there was no amusement in it now. You should be careful. Wade already gave me a version of that warning. I'm sure his was less charming. It was shorter. Then I'll be clear. Carter Westbrook does not get attached often. When he does, the city feels it. Nora's fingers stilled around the scissors. I don't know what you mean. You do. That's the trouble. Miles straightened. Enjoy your dinner, Nora. He left her with the roses and the sudden urge to throw the scissors into the wall. At 6:15, Nora went to her room above the garage. She took off her uniform and hung it with more care than necessary. Then she opened the small closet and stared at the few clothes inside. 2 sweaters, 1 black skirt, a blue dress she had bought 3 years ago for her grandmother's funeral. She reached for the dress. The fabric was plain and soft from age. It made her look less like a maid and more like a woman who might have somewhere to be. She brushed her hair until it fell loose around her shoulders, then pinned back only one side with a small gold clip her grandmother had once worn to church. In the mirror, she almost recognized herself. Almost. Her phone buzzed. Paige, send a picture or I call the police. Nora stared at the message, then set the phone face down. She could stop this. She could text Paige the truth. She could tell Mrs. Miller she felt sick. She could stay in her room and let the lie die quietly. Then she remembered Carter's face when she said normal sounded peaceful. The pain in it. The jealousy. The way he had almost answered when she asked what he was worried about. Nora picked up her coat. At exactly 6:30, she walked down the back stairs. Wade stood near the security office. His eyes flicked over the blue dress, the coat, the gold clip. He said nothing. That was worse. Nora stopped beside him. If he asks, I left on time. Wade's expression did not change. He knows. Of course he does. Wade glanced toward the main hall. You want a car? No. It's raining. I know. Take a car. No. His jaw tightened. You're stubborn. So I've been told. Wade opened the front gate from his tablet. As Nora stepped out, he said, For what it's worth, he's trying not to follow you. She turned back. Wade's face remained blank. Nora forced a small smile. For what it's worth, so am I. Then she walked into the rain. The city swallowed her quickly. She took a cab to Lincoln Park, not because there was a date waiting there, but because it was far enough from the mansion to feel like another life. The diner she chose had fogged windows, red vinyl booths, and a bell over the door that rang with every customer. A waitress with tired eyes led her to a booth near the window. Just one. The question landed harder than it should have. Nora nodded. Just one. She ordered tea and a slice of apple pie she did not want. Outside, umbrellas moved along the sidewalk. Cars hissed over wet pavement. Across the street, a couple argued under a black awning. Then the man kissed the woman's forehead and she laughed into his coat. Nora looked away. Her phone buzzed again. Page. How is Evan? Nora typed. He's nice. She deleted it. She typed. We're just talking. Deleted that too. Finally she wrote, It's going fine. The lie looked small on the screen. It did not feel small. She turned the phone over and wrapped both hands around her tea. An hour passed. Then another. No one came to sit across from her. No one asked about her life. No one looked at her like she was something dangerous to want. At 9, she paid the bill and stepped back into the rain. The cold hit through her coat. She walked for 3 blocks before hailing a cab, needing the movement, needing the punishment of wet shoes and wind on her cheeks. By the time she reached the mansion, the rain had softened to mist. The gates opened before she pressed the button. Someone had been watching. Nora's stomach tightened. She crossed the drive slowly. Most of the mansion was dark, but one light burned at the back of the house, the kitchen. Nora stood outside the door for a moment, her hand hovering over the handle. Inside, she could see Carter Westbrook seated at the staff table, jacket, gone sleeves, rolled a glass of whiskey untouched in front of him. His head lifted before she opened the door, as if he had felt her come home. Nora opened the kitchen door. Warm air touched her wet cheeks. The room smelled of coffee grounds, old wood, and the whiskey Carter had not drunk. He sat at the staff table like he had no right to be there and every right in the world. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his forearms. His dark hair was less perfect than usual, one strand fallen near his brow. The glass in front of him caught the light, but had not been touched. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain whispered against the windows behind her. Carter looked at her blue dress, at the damp ends of her hair, at the gold clip holding one side away from her face. His gaze moved slowly, not with the lazy interest of a man admiring a woman, but with the strained focus of someone searching for damage. Nora closed the door behind her. "You're still awake," she said. His mouth moved almost a smile, but nothing soft reached his eyes. "So are you. I just got back. I noticed." Of course he had. Nora took off her coat and hung it on the back of a chair. Water gathered in small, dark spots on the tile beneath it. She kept her hands busy smoothing the sleeves of her dress, though they needed no smoothing. Carter watched every movement. "How was your date?" His voice was calm enough to frighten her. Nora reached for the kettle near the stove. "It was fine. Fine." He repeated the word as if testing how much he hated it. "Yes." "What did you eat?" She froze. The diner receipt was still in her coat pocket. Tea. Apple pie. One person. Dinner, she said. That is not an answer. It is the only one you're entitled to. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor as he stood. Nora did not turn around, but she felt the shift in the room. Carter moving was different from other men moving. It changed the air first, then the silence, then her heartbeat. Did he bring you home? No. Did he walk you to the cab? Numb, did he touch you? She turned, then anger rising fast enough to cover the fear. You do not get to ask me that. Carter stood a few feet away. Too close for safety. Too far for honesty. His hands were loose at his sides, but everything about him looked held back by force. Did he? Nora stared at him. The lie had grown too heavy. She could feel it between them, swollen and ugly, pressing against her ribs. No, she said. Something flickered across his face. Relief, sharp and unwilling. It made her cruel. Would it have changed anything if he had Carter's eyes darkened? Yes. The answer landed between them with a force neither of them could pretend away. Nora's hand tightened around the edge of the counter. That is exactly the problem. He stepped closer. The problem is that you went out with a man you barely know just to prove a point. Nora laughed once, quiet and bitter. You don't know him. Neither do you. You have no idea what I know. I know you wore funeral blue to dinner. Her breath stopped. Carter's gaze moved over the dress again, but this time the look was not jealousy. It was memory. He had seen too much. He always had. Nora looked away. It was the only nice dress I had. No, he said quietly. It was the only dress that made you feel like you could survive being looked at. That broke through her anger so suddenly she had to grip the counter harder. Stop doing that. Doing what? Seeing things. His voice lowered. I tried. The kettle began to tremble on the stove, though Nora had not turned it on. The house made small sounds around them. Pipes settling, rain sliding. Somewhere far above the old mansion gave a wooden sigh. Carter looked at her like he was tired of silence. Tell me about him. No. Tell me what he gave you tonight that I can't. Nora swallowed. Peace. The word came out almost too soft to hear. Carter went still. She should have stopped, but the truth had already cracked open. A clean name. A normal table. A room where nobody checks the exits before they sit down. A life where a woman can be late because she wants to be, not because someone is deciding whether she belongs to him. His jaw tightened. I never said you belonged to me. No. You just act like the world should ask your permission before touching me. The words hit him. She saw it in the way his shoulders shifted in the brief lowering of his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was rougher. Because the world is not gentle with things I care about. Nora's chest tightened. Don't what say almost enough to make me foolish. He came one step closer. Nora. Her name sounded different in the kitchen at night. Not like an order. Not like a warning. Like a confession he had been holding under his tongue for years. She shook her head. There is no Evan. The words left her before she had chosen them. Carter did not move. What? Her throat ached. There was no date, no man, no dinner with anyone. I sat alone in a diner for 2 hours and drank tea until it went cold. His face changed so quickly it hurt to watch. Confusion first, then anger. Then relief so deep it looked almost painful. Beneath all of it was something wounded, something that had already believed the worst and did not know what to do with the truth. Why Nora looked down at her damp shoes. Because I needed to know. Know what? She forced herself to look at him. If it mattered. Carter's voice dropped. If what mattered, if I did. For a long moment, he only stared at her. The silence did not feel empty. It felt crowded with every almost they had ever lived through. Every glance over a polished table, every question left unfinished. Every time she had lowered her eyes first because looking at him too long felt like stepping off a roof, Carter took a breath. "You mattered the first morning you walked into this house." Nora's eyes burned. "Don't say that. You mattered when you gave Wade a towel without asking why his hands were bleeding. You mattered when you learned Grace's hands hurt before she admitted it. You mattered when you stood in my library holding a book like it was the last piece of a life someone stole from you." He stepped closer again. "You mattered before I had a name for what you were doing to me." Nora could not move. Carter stopped just short of touching her. "I told myself it was respect, then concern, then responsibility. I lied better than you did." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Carter saw it. His hand lifted, then froze in the air between them. He would not touch her without permission. That restraint undid her more completely than any demand could have. "I work for you," she whispered. "I know. I clean your floors. I know. I need this job. I know. You are the last man I should want." His hand lowered slowly. "I know that too." She laughed through the ache in her throat. "Then why are you standing here looking at me like that?" His answer came quietly. "Because you came home." The word struck something deep in her. Not came back. Came home. Nora closed her eyes. "Carter." It was the first time she had said his name without anger. His face changed. He looked like a man hearing music in a language he had forgotten he knew. "Say it again." She shook her head, but her voice betrayed her. "Carter." His restraint almost broke. She saw it. The slight flex of his hands, the tightening at his mouth, the storm behind his eyes. "I want to kiss you," he said. Nora's breath caught. He did not move. "I need you to tell me if that is not what you want." The kitchen seemed impossibly small. Nora thought about the narrow room above the garage, the bills under her mattress, the life she had built out of caution and exhaustion. She thought about the diner booth and the empty seat across from her. She thought about 2 years of looking away. "I can't lose this job," she said. "You won't. If this ends badly, I still need money. I still need my room. I still need my life. You'll have all of it. You can't say that just because you want me tonight." His eyes held hers. "I'm saying it because wanting you has made me understand exactly how much power I have over you, and I hate it." That stopped her. He continued, voice low and stripped bare. "I hate that you have to think about rent before you think about desire. I hate that my name can open doors and close them around you. I hate that if I ask for too much, you might feel trapped before you feel loved." Nora's lips parted, but no words came. Carter looked almost ashamed. "I have done many things I won't defend, but I will not make you another thing I took because I could." The tear on her cheek had cooled. She reached up and wiped it away herself. "If I say stop, I stop. If I say this was a mistake tomorrow, I'll believe you. If I leave pain crossed his face fast and naked, I'll let you." She studied him, searching for the lie. She found fear, need, restraint, a kind of honesty that looked like it cost him. No lie. Nora stepped closer. "Then kiss me." Carter did not rush. That made it worse. He lifted his hands slowly, giving her every chance to move away. His fingers touched her face as if her skin were something breakable. One hand cupped her cheek. The other rested lightly at her waist, barely there, asking instead of taking. Nora rose onto her toes and closed the final inch herself. The kiss was not gentle for long. At first it was a question, his mouth warm against hers. A pause, a breath, a final chance to retreat. Then Nora made a small sound she did not recognize, and Carter broke. He pulled her closer, not hard enough to hurt, but with a hunger that told her exactly how long he had been starving. His mouth moved over hers like silence being burned away. Nora gripped the front of his shirt, felt his heartbeat pounding beneath her fingers, and realized with a dizzy shock that Carter Westbrook was not calm at all. He was shaking. The knowledge lit something inside her. She kissed him harder. His hand slid into her hair, careful of the gold clip, then less careful when she pressed closer. The clip loosened and fell to the floor with a tiny sound neither of them followed. Her back met the counter. Carter stopped at once, pulling back enough to look at her. "Did I hurt you?" "No." Her voice sounded breathless and strange. He searched her face. "Nora." "I said no." She pulled him back down. This kiss was deeper, less polished. Years of restraint dissolved into heat in hands and the soft scrape of his breath against her cheek. He tasted faintly of coffee, not whiskey. He had not drunk it after all. That mattered. It should not have. It did. When they finally parted, Carter rested his forehead against hers. His eyes were closed. His hands still held her, but carefully now, as if control had returned in pieces. "You lied to me," he murmured. Nora let out a shaky breath. "Yes." "You let me think there was another man." "Yes." "You made me jealous on purpose." She did not apologize. Not right away. "Yes." His eyes opened. There was no anger in them now, only exhausted wonder and a dark edge of amusement. "You're more dangerous than half the men in this city." Nora almost smiled. "You deserved it a little. I deserved worse." The smile faded. "Maybe." He touched her cheek with his thumb. "I am sorry." The words were simple, heavy. For what? For letting you feel invisible in my house. Nora looked down. "You didn't." "Yes," he said. "I did. Because seeing you and doing nothing about it still left you alone. That was too much." She stepped back, needing air. Carter let her go immediately. The space between them returned, but it no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a choice. "I should go upstairs," she said. His face tightened, but he nodded. "Yes." Neither moved. Nora bent and picked up the gold clip from the floor. Her fingers trembled as she slipped it into her palm. At the door, she turned. "Carter." He looked up. The name still changed him. "This doesn't become another secret that only hurts me." His eyes held hers. "No, I mean it. I know." She believed him, not because he was a good man, not because love had made him safe, but because in that kitchen with rain darkening the windows and his kiss still burning her lips, Carter Westbrook looked like a man terrified of failing the one person he wanted to protect from himself. Nora went upstairs alone. She did not sleep. Dawn came pale and hard over Chicago. Nora dressed in her uniform with careful hands. Black dress, white apron. Hair pinned back, though not with the gold clip. She left that on her dresser like evidence. The woman in the mirror looked the same as yesterday, but Nora knew better. Her mouth remembered him. Her skin remembered the weight of his hands. Her heart, traitorous and awake, remembered the way he had said, "Because you came home." When she entered the kitchen, Mrs. Miller was already there kneading dough with slow, painful fingers. She looked at Nora once and knew everything worth knowing. "You didn't sleep," Mrs. Miller said. "No, neither did he." Nora reached for a mug. Mrs. Miller pushed a cup of coffee toward her instead. "He wants you in his office at 9. Nora's stomach tightened. "Did he say why no?" The older woman dusted flour from her hands. "But child, whatever happened last night, walk in with your spine straight. Love can make a woman soft without making her small. Don't confuse the two." Nora wrapped her hands around the cup. "I don't know what this is." Mrs. Miller's eyes softened. "Then make him help you define it." At 9 exactly, Nora knocked on Carter's office door. "Come in." His voice sounded rough. He stood by the window's jacket, off hands in his pockets, the lake behind him gray beneath a cold sky. He looked as tired as she felt. When he turned, his gaze went straight to her mouth, then lifted to her eyes with visible effort. "Nora." "Mr. Westbrook." Pain flashed across his face. She had not meant to hurt him, or maybe part of her had. He accepted it. "Close the door, please." She did. The click sounded louder than it should have. For a moment they faced each other across the office. This was where he had given her the raise, where she had asked why he cared, where he had lied about basic consideration while both of them listened to the truth breathing under the words. Carter spoke first. "Last night was not a mistake for me." Nora had prepared for many things. Regret, distance. A beautiful apology wrapped around rejection. Not that. She kept her expression steady. "That doesn't make it simple." "No." He walked toward her, then stopped with several feet still between them. "I spent the night thinking about every reason I should step back. And most of them are good reasons." Her chest tightened. He saw it and continued quickly. "You work for me. You live under my roof. My world is dangerous. My name puts you at risk. My attention puts you at risk. My enemies would see you as leverage before they saw you as a person." Nora forced herself to breathe. "Then maybe you should step back." His jaw flexed. "Is that what you want?" The honest answer frightened her. "No." The word was quiet, but it filled the room. Carter's eyes closed for half a second. When they opened, something had changed in them. Not triumph. Relief. "All right," he said. "All right. We do this carefully." Nora almost laughed. "You make it sound like a business arrangement." "I understand business arrangements. I am not one." "No," he said. "You are the only thing in this room I'm afraid to mishandle." The words reached her before she could defend against them. Carter went to his desk and picked up a folder. He held it out. Nora did not take it. "What is that, a revised employment agreement?" Her eyes sharpened. "You wrote paperwork after kissing me. I had Miles draft 3 versions at 4 in the morning without telling him why." Despite everything, Nora stared. Miles knows something. Miles always knows something. She took the folder slowly. Inside was a contract with her name at the top. Higher pay. Fixed hours. Guaranteed housing for 1 year regardless of personal circumstances. Severance if she chose to leave. A clause allowing transfer to administrative work in one of Carter's legitimate companies if she wanted distance from the mansion. Nora read the first page twice. Her throat closed. This is too much. No, it is what should have existed before last night. She looked up. "You can't buy fairness." "No," he said, "but I can stop benefiting from its absence." Nora held the folder against her chest. "I won't be kept. I know. I won't be hidden. I know. I won't become some woman tucked away upstairs while you bring the acceptable world through the front door." His face hardened, not at her, but at the thought. "No. If we do this, I keep my work until I decide otherwise. Real work. Not pretend duties designed to make you feel less guilty. Yes. And if I decide I can't survive this..." The room went still. Carter's voice came lower. "Then you leave with money in your account, a place to go and no one following you unless you ask for protection." Nora watched him carefully. "Could you really let me go?" The question hurt him. She did not look away from it. "I don't know," he said. Her fingers tightened on the folder. Then he added, "But I would." That answer mattered more because it was not easy. Nora stepped closer. "I'm scared of you." Carter did not flinch. You should be. I'm also scared of myself with you. His face softened. That makes two of us. A small, breathless laugh escaped her. It broke the tension just enough. Carter smiled then. A real one. Brief, surprised, almost boyish before it disappeared. Nora felt it like sunlight through a locked window. He reached out, then stopped. May I? She nodded. His fingers brushed the inside of her wrist, the same place he had touched before all this began. This time there was no accident in it. He lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to her knuckles. Not claiming. Promising. Nora closed her eyes. When she opened them, Carter was watching her with all the restraint and want he had carried for 2 years. We try, she said. He nodded. We try. She should have left then. They both knew it. Instead, she stepped into him. This kiss was different from the kitchen. Softer, but not smaller. Carter held her like he had learned the shape of his own strength and feared it. Nora slid one hand to the back of his neck, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her fingers. Outside the office, the mansion carried on. Footsteps in the hall. A phone ringing somewhere below. The low murmur of men with dangerous errands and polished shoes. Inside, Carter kissed Nora as if the rest of the world had gone quiet at last. When she pulled back, he rested his hand lightly at her waist. You should go, he said. I know. Neither of them moved. Then Nora smiled, small and unsteady. Mr. Westbrook. His eyes narrowed slightly. Nora. I have work to do. His thumb brushed once over her waist before he let her go. So do I. She walked to the door with the folder in her hands. Before opening it, she looked back. Carter stood where she had left him, no mask in place, no coldness to hide behind. For the first time since Nora had entered the Westbrook mansion, she did not lower her eyes. She opened the door and stepped into the hall, carrying the contract like a shield and a key. At the far end of the corridor, Wade glanced at her once, then at Carter's closed office door. His mouth twitched. Nora lifted her chin and kept walking. Behind her in the office, Carter Westbrook did not call her back. That was how she knew he understood. For 3 days after Carter handed Nora the contract, the mansion learned how to breathe around a secret. Nothing obvious changed. Nora still came downstairs before sunrise. She still tied her apron in the kitchen mirror, checked Mrs. Miller's tea, and polished the silver until the spoons reflected the chandelier above them. Carter still took his morning calls in the office overlooking Lake Michigan. Men still arrived in dark coats and left with darker expressions. But beneath the old routine, something had shifted. When Carter entered a room, Nora felt it before she looked up. When Nora passed the study, Carter's voice changed by a fraction. When their hands brushed over a coffee cup, neither of them moved for 1 second too long. The staff pretended not to see. Mrs. Miller saw everything. Wade saw more than he admitted. Miles Cross saw enough to look amused and worried at the same time. The first week was careful. Painfully careful. Carter did not summon Nora without reason. Nora did not linger near his office. In public, they kept the distance expected of an employer and an employee, but behind closed doors, silence became less cruel. One evening, Nora found Carter in the library, sitting in the leather chair near the fireplace with a folder open on his lap. The room was low lit warm with amber lamps and the faint smell of smoke from the hearth. Outside, Chicago pressed against the windows, cold and glittering. You missed dinner, she said. Carter looked up. So did you. I was working. That is not a defense. You always work. She walked in with a tray. Soup, bread, and coffee. She placed it on the table beside him. He stared at the tray, then at her. You made this. Mrs. Miller made the soup. I carried it. Try not to be overwhelmed by my culinary contribution. His mouth curved. That smile still startled her. It made him look less like the man whispered about in alderman offices and back rooms, more like someone who might have had a different life if the world had not claimed him young. He reached for the spoon. "You're mocking me in my own house. I'm feeding you in your own house. Both can be true." Nora moved to the shelves, pretending to check the book order. She felt his eyes follow her. "Nora." She turned. His expression had softened. "Come sit with me." She looked toward the door. "No one comes here after 9. That is not what I asked." Her heart gave a slow, dangerous pull. She went to him. Carter set the folder aside and reached for her hand. He did not tug. He only offered. Nora placed her fingers in his, and he drew her gently down onto the arm of the chair. For a moment, they simply sat there, her hand inside his, the firelight moving over their skin. "What are you reading?" she asked. "Labor contracts. Sounds romantic." "It could be. Depends how passionate you are about freight routes." She laughed softly. His eyes lifted to her face. "There it is." "What?" "That sound." She looked away, embarrassed by the tenderness in his voice. "Don't make a thing out of it. I make things out of everything. It's a character flaw. One of many." He smiled again, then lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. The gesture was simple, almost old-fashioned. It made something ache behind her ribs. "You should eat," she said, because she could not bear the quiet. "I will." "You say that like someone who won't. I say that like someone who wants you to stay while I do." So she stayed. Those moments became their stolen life. A cup of coffee shared in the pantry before dawn. 5 minutes in the west corridor when the house was changing shifts. A kiss in Carter's office with the door locked and Nora's hands pressed against his chest, feeling his heart run faster than his face allowed. Nights in the library where he asked about her grandmother, her lost scholarship, the exact color of the hospital room curtains. He listened to every answer like he was gathering evidence against the universe. In return, Carter gave pieces of himself carefully. He told her his mother had died when he was 14. His father had been respected, feared, and impossible to please. Carter had been 16 when he learned that a Westbrook son did not get a childhood once blood touched the family name. He did not tell every story. Nora did not ask for all of them. Not yet. One night she traced the scar near his ribs through the fabric of his shirt. This one. His hand covered hers. Detroit. That is not an answer. It is the safest part of the answer. She looked up. His eyes were tired. "Did someone try to kill you?" "Yes. And you say that like you're telling me it rained." "It was raining." Nora pulled her hand away. Carter caught the change at once. "I'm sorry. I don't want you to be casual about your life." "I'm not. You are." "No," he said quietly. "I'm careful about how much of it I put in your hands." She looked at him, then really looked. The controlled mouth, the sharp cheekbones, the darkness beneath his eyes that no sleep seemed to reach. "I'm not glass." "I know." "Then stop holding the truth like it might shatter me." His face changed. That was the first night he told her about the shooting. Not everything. Enough. A rival crew. A warehouse near the river. A bad deal. Blood on concrete. Wade dragging him into a car while Carter tried to stand because his father had taught him that powerful men did not fall where enemies could see. Nora listened without interrupting. When he finished, she touched the scar again. "I hate this world," she whispered. Carter closed his eyes. "So do I sometimes." "But you stay in it. I was born in it. That is not the same as staying." His eyes opened. For a moment, something like hope and pain moved through them together. Before he could answer, his phone rang. The sound cut the room clean in half. Carter glanced at the screen. Every softness vanished. Nora saw the man the city knew return to his face. Westbrook, he answered. Silence. Then his jaw tightened. Put miles on it. No, not tomorrow. Now. He ended the call and stood. What happened? Nora asked. He adjusted his cuffs. The movement was precise, almost ritual. Business. That word is starting to mean blood. His eyes met hers. Tonight it means Bellamy. The name meant little to her then, but the way Carter said it made the room colder. Who is Bellamy? Grant. Bellamy controls parts of Cicero and Joliet. Union's truck routes, private security, a few politicians who pretend they don't know him. And he's a problem. He wants to be. Carter reached for his jacket. Nora stood too. Are you in danger? He paused. The question seemed to touch him more than he wanted it to. Not more than usual. That is a terrible answer. It is an honest one. She crossed the room and straightened his collar, though it did not need straightening. Come back. His hand closed gently around her wrist. I always come back. Nora looked at him. Don't make promises like a man who thinks death takes appointments. His mouth softened. Then I'll make it simpler. He leaned down and kissed her once, slow and careful. I'll try. It was not enough. It was better than a lie. After he left, Nora sat alone in the library until the fire burned low. Near midnight, she went to the kitchen for water and found Wade at the table pressing a towel around his split knuckles. He looked up, then back down. You should be asleep. You should be using ice. It's fine. It's bleeding through the towel. That happens when skin opens. Nora opened the freezer, took out an ice pack, wrapped it in a clean cloth, and placed it beside him. Wade stared at it. You always this bossy, only when men pretend injuries are weather. He picked up the ice pack with a faint grunt. Nora sat across from him. Is Carter hurt? No. The answer came fast. She exhaled. Wade watched her carefully. You care about him. It was not a question. Yes. His expression did not change, but the room did. You understand what that means. I'm learning. No, Wade said. You're feeling. That's different. Nora looked at his injured hand. Then explain it. Wade leaned back. The chair creaked under his weight. Men like Carter don't get normal things. Normal dinners, normal sleep, normal love. Everything near him becomes part of the map. Friends, houses, habits, women. Nora's fingers tightened around her glass. You mean targets. I mean doors. Anyone wanting to hurt him will look for the door with the weakest lock. A chill moved through her. And you think that's me? I think he does. The words landed heavily. Has he said that Carter doesn't say the things that scare him most? Nora stared at the dark kitchen window. Her own reflection looked pale in the glass. Wade lowered his voice. He cares about you more than is good for him. And for me, Wade did not soften the truth. Maybe not good for you either. She should have been angry. Instead, she felt something colder. Clarity. Then why are you telling me this? Because if you run clean. If you stay knowing where you are. Nora looked back at him. And where am I? Wade's eyes held hers. In the crossfire. The next evening, Nora met the Bellamys. Carter had not wanted her to attend the dinner. He said it casually at first, then more firmly when she ignored him. It's a private event. I understand. It will be ugly. Then I should know what ugly looks like in a dining room. Nora. She turned from the mirror where she was trying to fasten the clasp of a borrowed pearl necklace Mrs. Miller had pressed into her hand without explanation. I am not asking to sit at your business table. I am asking not to be treated like a woman too delicate to know which house she lives in. Carter stood in the doorway of the small sitting room they had begun using when they needed privacy. He wore a black suit perfectly cut with a white shirt and no tie. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were not. You are not delicate. Good. You are also not trained for rooms like this. Then train me. He stared at her. The words seemed to settle between them as something larger than dinner. Finally, he crossed the room and took the necklace from her hands. Turn around. She did. His fingers brushed the back of her neck as he fastened the clasp. Nora watched him in the mirror, the concentration on his face, the restraint, the worry he did not bother hiding from her anymore. You stay close to me, he said. I work the room as staff. No. The word was immediate. She turned. Carter. No, he repeated. Not tonight. Then what am I supposed to be? He looked at her for a long moment. Mine. Her pulse jumped. His face tightened as if he knew the word was dangerous. Not owned, he said quietly. Never that. Nora held his gaze. But claimed. Yes. The honesty should have frightened her. It did. It also steadied her. Then you should know something, she said. What if someone tries to make me feel small tonight? I won't wait for you to save me. For the first time that evening, Carter smiled. I know. The dinner was held in the west dining room beneath a ceiling painted with storm clouds and angels. The Bellamys arrived at 8. Grant Bellamy was elegant in the way old predators often were. Silver hair, tailored navy suit, soft hands, cold eyes. He smiled when he greeted Carter, but the smile never reached anything human. Carter, he said, your father would admire what you've done with the city. Carter shook his hand. My father admired very few things. True, mostly himself. The men around them laughed because they understood they were supposed to. Beside Grant stood Victoria Bellamy. She was beautiful in a white silk dress with red hair swept into a smooth knot and diamonds at her ears. Her gaze moved over Carter, first assessing. Then it found Nora. There was a pause, small, polite, sharp. And who is this? Victoria asked. Carter's hand settled at Nora's lower back. Nora Bennett. Victoria waited for more. Carter gave her nothing. Nora smiled. Good evening. Victoria looked at Nora's dress, then her pearls, then her hands. Hands that knew work even when clean. How lovely, Victoria said. I wasn't aware, mister. Westbrook was including household staff at private dinners now. The room quieted. Carter's hand tightened at Nora's back. Nora felt the warning in him, the violence ready beneath skin. She stepped half an inch forward, enough to answer for herself. I wasn't aware the Bellamys still judged people by where they stood in a house. Victoria's smile froze. Grant Bellamy's eyes sharpened with interest. Nora continued, her voice calm. I've found the people who work behind the doors often know more about loyalty than the ones who enter through the front. A few men looked down at their glasses. Victoria's cheeks colored, but she recovered quickly. How refreshing. Carter. She's spirited. Carter did not look away from Nora. Yes, he said. She is. That was all. But it felt like a declaration. Through dinner, Nora learned what power sounded like when it wore good manners. No one said threat. They said concern. No one said territory. They said mutual interests. No one said violence. They said consequences. Grant Bellamy spoke softly about Root's security contracts and old agreements. Carter answered even more softly. Miles watched every face. Wade stood near the door with his hands folded in front of him, looking bored enough to terrify anyone paying attention. Victoria watched Nora. By dessert, Nora understood that the Bellamys had come to test weakness, and they had found her. After the guests left, Carter walked Nora to the library. He closed the door behind them but did not turn on the light. Moonlight silvered the shelves and touched the edges of his face. "You should not have had to endure that," he said. Nora leaned against the table. "I've endured worse than rich women with sharp tongues. That was not just a sharp tongue. I know." He looked at her. "Do you—" She wanted to know if I embarrassed you. His expression darkened. "You could never embarrass me." She wanted to know if I was temporary. Carter went still. Nora's throat tightened, but she continued. "And I realized I didn't know how you would answer." The room seemed to stop. Carter crossed to the desk, opened the top drawer, and took out a small velvet box. Nora's breath vanished. "Carter, I had a speech," he said. His voice was rougher than usual. She stared at the box. "What happened to it?" "You walked into my house 2 years ago, and I've been losing words ever since." He came back to her and lowered to one knee. Nora covered her mouth with one hand. Outside, the wind moved against the windows. Inside, the most feared man in Chicago looked up at her like she held his life between her fingers. "Nora Bennett," he said, "I have built everything I own out of control. Money, loyalty, fear. Doors that open when I say open and close when I say close." His hand tightened around the box. "Then you came into my home with tired eyes, worn shoes, and more dignity than anyone I'd ever known. You made me want things I had no language for. Peace. Mercy." A morning that did not begin with war. Nora's vision blurred. "I know marrying me means danger. I know my name is heavy. I know there are parts of my life that may always frighten you." He opened the box. The ring was simple, platinum with a single diamond that caught the moonlight without shouting for it. "But I swear to you, I will never use love as a cage. I will never call possession protection. I will spend every day proving that the safest place for your heart is not away from me, but beside me." His voice broke slightly. "Marry me." Nora could hear her own heartbeat. It seemed impossible that this was the same room where she had once shelved books after midnight and told herself women like her did not get men like him. Maybe they did not. Maybe she was not getting him. Maybe she was choosing him. "Ask me again," she whispered. Carter's eyes searched hers. "Nora Bennett, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out with a sob. "Yes, Carter." He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that shook. Then he rose and kissed her, not like a conqueror, not like a king, but like a man who had been forgiven for wanting heaven with blood still on his hands. For one night, they were happy. By morning, the city answered. The message arrived in the security office before breakfast. Wade brought it to Carter in silence. Miles followed behind him, his usual polish stripped down to something hard. Nora was in Carter's office when they entered. Carter took one look at Wade's face and stood. What Wade handed him an envelope, no stamp, no return address. Carter opened it. Inside was a photograph. Nora leaving the free clinic on West Armitage where she volunteered some Sunday mornings. She wore jeans, a dark coat, and her hair loose beneath a knit hat. She remembered that day. She had bought a coffee after her shift and walked back to the bus stop alone. Someone had been close enough to capture the tired line of her face. On the back, written in black ink, were 5 words. "Pretty things break first." Nora's body went cold. Carter did not speak. That was how she knew the danger had become real. The silence in him turned absolute. Miles looked at Nora, then away. Wade's hand rested near the gun beneath his jacket. Carter set the photograph on the desk with careful precision. "Who delivered it?" Wade answered. "Courier. Fake name. Gone before we knew what it was." "Bellamy." Miles nodded. "Most likely." Nora looked at Carter. His face was calm. Too calm. "What happens now?" she asked. Carter's eyes moved to her. For one second the man she loved was there. Afraid. Furious. Tender. Then the boss returned. "You leave Chicago." "No." "Nora." "No." He came around the desk. "This is not a discussion." Her fear sparked into anger. "It absolutely is. They photographed you outside a clinic. I can see that. They are telling me they can reach you, and sending me away tells them I am exactly the weakness they think I am." Carter's eyes flashed. "You are my weakness." The words stunned the room. He did not take them back. His voice lowered. "And I will not apologize for protecting it." Nora stepped closer. "I am not arguing against protection. I am arguing against being packed away like something fragile." Wade spoke from the door. "Lake House is ready." Nora turned on him. You knew Wade did not blink. "I prepare for things before people admit they need preparing for." Carter reached for her hand. "Nora, please." That word changed everything. Not an order, not control. Please. She looked at the photograph on the desk. Her own face in someone else's hands. Her ordinary Sunday turned into leverage. The room tilted slightly. Where she asked. Carter's grip softened. Lake Geneva. A house outside town. Secure road. Bullet-resistant windows. "Wade will drive you. Miles will stay until this is handled. And you..." His face hardened. "I'll handle Bellamy." She wanted to fight him. She wanted to demand every detail. She wanted to stay because leaving felt like losing. But she saw the fear he was trying to hide. Not fear for himself. Fear for her. That kind of fear had teeth. "All right," she said. Carter exhaled. "But I want the truth when it's done." His eyes held hers. "You'll have it." 3 hours later, Nora sat in the back of a black SUV watching Chicago disappear behind rain-streaked glass. Wade drove. Miles sat in the passenger seat, phone in hand, speaking in short, coded phrases to men Nora could not see. The ring on her finger felt heavy. Not with regret, with consequence. The city gave way to highways, then smaller roads, then the dark winter shape of trees. By the time they reached the lake house, the sky had turned bruised purple. The house was beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel. Stone walls, wide windows, a view of cold water moving under a pale moon. Inside, every room was warm, elegant, and watched by cameras. A gilded cage, Nora thought. Miles showed her the bedroom, the exits, the safe room. She listened until he stopped speaking. Then she said, "Tell me how bad it is." Miles looked at her. "The boss is handling it. Try again." He studied her for a long moment. "You really do hate being managed." "Yes." Something like respect moved through his face. "The Bellamys plan to take you outside the clinic. Not kill you. Use you. Grant wants 3 construction contracts, 2 union routes, and port access." Carter cut off last year. Nora sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. "So I'm a bargaining chip." "No," Miles said. "You're the reason Carter won't bargain." The words settled like snow over a grave. That night, Carter called at 2 a.m. Nora answered before the first ring ended. "Are you hurt?" "No." His voice was rough, low, exhausted. She closed her eyes. "Tell me." Silence. Then, "It's almost done." "What does that mean?" "It means Grant Bellamy is learning where the line is." "Did you kill anyone?" The silence after that question was longer. "No." Nora let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "But you hurt people." "Yes." She pressed a hand to her stomach. "Badly, Nora. Badly." His answer came like stone. "Enough." She turned toward the window. The lake outside was black and endless. "I'm scared of that part of you. I know. I need you to be scared of it too." His voice changed. I am. That was the answer that kept her on the phone. When Carter arrived the next afternoon, Nora ran to him before pride could stop her. He stepped out of the SUV looking pale with exhaustion, his coat dark. His jaw shadowed one bruise near his temple that made her heart lurch. He caught her against him and held on so tightly she could feel the tremor in his arms. It's over, he said into her hair. She pulled back. Is it? His eyes met hers. Yes. Inside by the fire, he told her enough. The Bellamys had planned the abduction. Carter had found the men hired to do it. He had broken the plan, the money, the roots, and Grant Bellamy's confidence. No bodies, no war in the streets, but enough damage that the message would travel faster than blood. Nora listened with her hands folded in her lap. When he finished, she said, I don't want to love a man who becomes worse because he loves me. Carter looked as if she had struck him. I know. I mean it. So do I. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head bowed. I wanted to kill them. The honesty entered the room like smoke. Nora did not move. Carter continued. When I saw your photograph in that envelope, I wanted every Bellamy man buried before sunset. His hands clenched. I didn't do it because I heard your voice in my head asking whether fear is the only language I know. Nora's throat tightened. He looked up. I can't promise I'll become clean. That word doesn't belong to me. But I can become better than I was yesterday. She reached for his hand. Then start there. 2 weeks later, they married in a small stone chapel near the lake. There were no society pages, no photographers, no flowers spilling down cathedral steps, just candlelight winter trees beyond stained glass, and the few people who knew enough of the darkness to understand the light. Mrs. Miller cried before the music began. Wade stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes suspiciously bright. Miles adjusted Carter's tie twice, though it was already perfect. Nora wore ivory. Simple, soft, with long sleeves and no veil. Her grandmother's gold clip held one side of her hair back. When the doors opened, Carter turned. The look on his face nearly broke her. Not possession, not triumph. Wonder. Nora walked toward him slowly, holding Mrs. Miller's arm. Every step felt like crossing a line the world had drawn for her years ago. The officiant spoke, but Nora heard only pieces. Love, honor, truth, devotion. Then Carter took her hands. His voice shook when he began. Carter Westbrook, take you, Nora Bennett, to be my wife. I promise to protect you, but never cage you. To love you, but never own you. To tell you the truth, even when it makes me look like a monster. I promise to spend my life becoming a man worthy of walking beside you. Nora's tears fell silently. When it was her turn, she held his hands tighter. I, Nora Bennett, take you, Carter Westbrook, to be my husband. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. I promise to love the man you are and fight for the man you are trying to become. I promise not to disappear inside your world and not to let you disappear inside the darkness. Carter's breath caught. The ring slid onto her finger beside the first. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Carter kissed her like he had been waiting his whole life to come home and had only just found the door. At the small reception afterward, they danced beneath string lights in the courtyard of the lake house. Snow began to fall in thin silver lines. Mrs. Miller sat wrapped in a blanket, smiling through tears. Wade spoke quietly with 2 guards near the gate. Miles drank champagne and pretended not to watch every shadow. Carter held Nora close. Any regrets, Mrs. Westbrook? The name moved through her like a bell. She looked up at him, at the bruise fading near his temple, at the eyes still carrying ghosts. at the man who had chosen restraint when violence would have been easier. Not one. His face softened. Even knowing what my life is, especially knowing. The music slowed. Nora rested her cheek against his chest and listened to his heart. It was not a peaceful sound. It was strong, restless, alive. Beyond the lights, men with guns stood guard in the falling snow. Inside Carter's arms, Nora did not feel safe in the simple way she once imagined safety. She felt chosen. She felt seen. She felt afraid. And she stayed. Marriage did not turn Nora Bennett into a princess. It turned her into Nora Westbrook. That name followed her before she entered rooms. It moved ahead of her through polished doors and private clubs, across charity tables and courthouse steps, into restaurants where men in tailored suits lowered their voices when Carter appeared. Some people looked at Nora with curiosity, some with envy, some with pity so delicate it almost passed for kindness. They all looked. That was the first thing she learned. In the mansion, life rearranged itself around her new title. Mrs. Miller stopped letting her scrub floors, though Nora still woke before sunrise out of habit. The first morning she reached for the mop bucket, Mrs. Miller took it from her hands without a word. "I know how to clean a floor," Nora said. "I know. Then give it back." "No." Nora stared at her. Mrs. Miller poured coffee into 2 cups and slid one across the counter. "You can run a house without being on your knees in it." The words landed harder than they should have. Nora looked through the kitchen window. Snow clung to the edge of the garden. Beyond the gates, 2 black cars waited with engines running. Carter was already in his office. She had heard his voice through the door before dawn, low and controlled, speaking to men who used careful words for violent things. "I don't want to become useless," Nora said. Mrs. Miller's face softened. "Child, nobody who knows where every secret in this house is kept could ever be useless." So Nora learned a new rhythm. She still checked the pantry, still knew which staff member needed rest, which guard had a sick child, which guest bedroom smelled faintly of smoke after Miles took calls there. But now she also sat beside Carter at dinners where loyalty was bought with smiles and threatened with silence. The first formal event after the wedding was a charity gala at the Drake Hotel. Carter stood beside Nora in the ballroom while cameras flashed near the entrance. His hand rested lightly at her back, not pushing, not holding her in place, just there. A reminder, a promise. "You can leave any time," he murmured. Nora looked around the room. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, champagne in thin glasses. Men who had ruined lives discussing hospital donations. Women with diamonds bright enough to hide sharp teeth. "I know. I mean it." She turned to him. "I do too." Something proud and worried moved through his eyes. Across the ballroom, Victoria Bellamy watched them. She arrived as if the room had been waiting for her. Red dress, pale throat, smile like a blade tucked inside velvet. Nora saw her coming before Carter did. "Mrs. Westbrook," Victoria said. Nora did not flinch at the name. Victoria. Victoria's eyes moved over Nora's gown. Dark green silk. Simple. Elegant. Chosen by Nora, not Carter. "How quickly you've adjusted." Nora smiled. "People are very helpful when they want to know whether you'll fail." Carter's fingers flexed once at her back. Victoria's smile thinned. "I imagine it must feel strange, going from service corridors to center tables." Nora lifted her glass. Not as strange as watching people mistake inheritance for character. The conversations nearest them softened into silence. Victoria's eyes flashed. Carter leaned down, his voice low enough for only Nora to hear. "I am trying very hard not to look delighted." "Try harder," Nora said. His mouth curved. Victoria recovered, but not cleanly. "You've become confident." "No," Nora said. "I've become visible. People confuse the two." For the rest of the night, Carter kept looking at her as if she had done something dangerous and beautiful. In the car home, he was quiet. Nora watched city lights move across his face. "What?" He looked at her. "You held that room like you were born to it." "I wasn't." "I know. Then why do you look sad?" His jaw tightened. "Because I hate that you had to learn." Nora took his hand. "You did not take my old life from me, Carter. Debt took some of it. Grief took some of it. Fear took the rest." He looked down at their joined hands. "And what did I take?" She moved closer. "My excuses." That made him look at her. "I could have stayed invisible forever and called it dignity. You made that impossible." He touched her cheek with his knuckles. "I don't want my world to harden you. It already has." Pain crossed his face. Nora covered his hand with hers. But not everywhere. At the mansion, she removed her earrings in front of the bedroom mirror and stared at her own reflection. The woman looking back wore silk and diamonds, but her eyes were the same ones that had once watched hospital monitors blink in the dark. Carter came up behind her. She met his gaze in the mirror. "I don't want to become cruel." His hands settled at her waist. "You won't. How do you know cruel people don't worry about the cost of surviving?" Nora leaned back against him, but her mind stayed restless. The cost was everywhere. It was in the way guards changed routes when she left the mansion, in the way waiters looked at Carter's table before approaching, in the way Carter could end a man's career with a quiet sentence, and sometimes did. He was trying. She saw that. He chose restraint more often than he had before. He listened when she said there had to be another way. But darkness did not leave a man because he loved someone. Sometimes it only learned to speak more softly. The first crack came through Lily Dawson. Lily had joined the staff shortly before the wedding. She was young, pretty in a nervous way, with soft brown hair and hands that trembled when Carter crossed a room. Nora had liked her at first. Lily was eager, polite, and always early. Then Nora began noticing things. Lily remembered names she should not know. She paused outside Carter's study when voices were low. She avoided the East Hall camera without ever being told where its blind corner began. Once Nora entered the laundry room and found Lily slipping a phone beneath a folded sheet. Lily smiled too quickly. "Sorry, Mrs. Westbrook. My sister keeps texting." Nora looked at the phone. Family can be persistent. "Yes." Nora said nothing to Carter at first. She watched. 3 nights later, she found Lily inside Carter's study. The house was quiet. Carter had gone to a meeting downtown with Wade. Miles was in the security room. Nora had come to the study because Carter had forgotten his reading glasses on the desk, and some small domestic part of her liked placing them beside his book before he returned. The door was open by an inch. A soft blue glow moved inside. Nora pushed the door wider. Lily stood at Carter's desk with a flash drive in her hand. For 1 second, neither woman breathed. Then Lily reached for her pocket. "Don't," Nora said. Her voice was calm enough to surprise them both. Lily froze. Nora stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "Put it on the desk." Lily's face had gone white. "Mrs. Westbrook, I can explain. I hope so." The flash drive clicked softly against the wood. Nora looked at the open drawer. Carter's private files were not there. He was too careful for that. But a careless spy could still be useful to whoever sent her. "Who are you working for?" Lily's mouth trembled. "No one." Nora tilted her head. "Try again." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I did not want to hurt anyone. That is not an answer." The door opened behind them. Miles stepped in first, gun drawn, and pointed at the floor. Wade followed, larger and colder. Carter entered last. His eyes went to Nora, then to Lily, then to the flash drive. The room changed. Lily started crying. Carter's voice was soft. "Who are you?" Lily looked at Nora as if mercy might live there. "Federal Task Force." Wade swore under his breath. Miles closed the door. Carter did not move. "How long?" Lily swallowed. 4 months. Nora felt the betrayal settle into the room like dust. Carter smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You walked into my house wearing a wire." Lily shook her head quickly. "Not tonight. Not tonight, I swear." Wade moved forward. Nora raised a hand. He stopped. Everyone noticed. Carter looked at her. "She is 23 and terrified," Nora said. "That does not mean harmless. It means useful." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Nora, she is proof they are watching you closely enough to risk sending someone inside." "I know what she is." "No," Nora said. "You know what you want her to be." The room went very quiet. Carter's jaw flexed. "And what is that an excuse?" For a moment she thought he might shout. Not at her. Never at her now. But at the truth. Instead, he looked at Lily. "Take her downstairs. No one touches her." Wade looked almost offended. Carter's voice hardened. "No one." When Lily was gone, Nora turned to the desk. The flash drive sat between them like a lit match. Carter stood near the window, hands at his sides, breathing slowly. "They came into my home," he said. "Yes. Into our home. Yes." His eyes met hers. "And you want me to stay calm?" "No. I want you to think before you bleed." Miles, still by the door, gave Nora a look that was almost admiration. Carter crossed the room and picked up the flash drive. "They want evidence. Give them a story." His brows drew together. Nora stepped closer. "You told me you wanted to be better. Not clean overnight. Better." "This is the door," Miles said. "That door may lead to prison. Only if Carter keeps pretending nothing has changed." Carter's gaze sharpened. Nora continued each word steadier than the last. "Shut down the violent operations first. Move what can be moved into the companies that already exist on paper. Construction, security, freight. Use lawyers. Use accountants who are afraid of jail but not afraid of hard work. Let the task force see a transition they can claim as a victory." Miles stared at her. Wade, who had returned silently to the doorway, looked from Nora to Carter. Carter said nothing. Nora touched his wrist. "You can either fight the government like the man your enemies expect you to be, or make yourself harder to destroy by becoming useful in daylight." The words hung there. Carter looked at her for a long time. Then he laughed, once quiet and disbelieving. "My wife just advised me to launder my soul through corporate compliance." Nora did not smile. "I advised you to stop giving them the rope." Miles murmured. "She's not wrong." Wade looked annoyed by the fact that he agreed. The months that followed were the hardest of Nora's life. Harder than grief, because grief had been simple in its cruelty. This was complicated. Every step toward legitimacy pulled something loose. Money disappeared. Old captains complained. Men who had followed Carter because they feared him began testing whether mercy had made him weak. One warehouse burned on the south side. Nora arrived after the fire was out. Smoke rose into the dawn. Carter stood near the ruined doors with ash on his coat and murder in his eyes. Wade spoke low beside him. "We know who ordered it." Carter's voice was flat. "Bring him to me." Nora stepped closer. Carter did not look at her. "Go home." "No, this is not a place for you. It became one when you made me your wife." He turned then, furious and afraid. "There are moments when I cannot be the man you want." Nora looked at the burned warehouse, at the men waiting for his command, at the city waking gray around them. I am not asking you to be gentle with people trying to destroy us. Then what are you asking? To choose the move that wins tomorrow, not the one that feels good tonight? His face changed. The men around them pretended not to listen. Carter looked toward the smoke. Fear works faster. Nora stepped beside him. So does fire. That does not mean you build a home with it. He closed his eyes. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then Carter said, Call the lawyers. Call the inspector. Pull every record on the building. We bury him in paper before we bury him in the ground. Wade looked almost proud. Miles smiled faintly. Nora breathed again. Not every victory looked clean. Some looked like a violent man choosing a slower weapon. The federal pressure did not vanish all at once. It loosened. Lily disappeared into protective custody. Carter never told Nora what deal had been made, and Nora never asked for every detail. Some truths were useful. Some only cut. 3 months after the night in the study, Carter stood in front of a conference room full of lawyers, auditors, and men who once would have carried guns before briefcases. Nora sat at the far end of the table listening as he closed the last of the old roots. His voice was calm. This family survives because it adapts. Anyone who needs blood to feel powerful is free to leave. No one moved. Carter looked around the room. No one. Silence. Good. Under the table, Nora touched her thumb to her wedding ring. That evening, Carter took her to a small building on the west side. It had once been a closed clinic with plywood over the windows. Now the glass was new. The walls smelled of paint. A brass plaque near the entrance read, Evelyn Bennett Medical Scholarship Foundation. Nora stopped walking. Carter stood beside her, suddenly uncertain. I should have asked. She could not speak. Inside, a group of students stood with folders in their hands. One young woman held an acceptance letter to her chest and cried while her mother kissed her hair. Nora pressed a hand to her mouth. Carter's voice was quiet. You should have had this. She looked at the plaque again. Her grandmother's name, not buried in hospital paperwork, not reduced to debt, shining on a door that opened. Nora turned to him. Make sure they get further than I did. His eyes softened. Done. She kissed him there in the empty entryway with paint still drying and hope still fragile around them. Weeks later, Snow returned to Chicago. The mansion was quiet that night. Mrs. Miller had gone to bed early. Wade was posted near the gates. Miles was downtown. Carter stood in the unfinished nursery with the lights off, looking at the pale walls as if they had asked him a question he did not know how to answer. Nora found him there. You've been avoiding this room, she said. He turned. I have been respecting its potential. That sounds like avoiding. His mouth curved, then faded. I did not know if you wanted it. She walked in slowly. There was no crib yet. Only covered furniture, a soft rug, and moonlight falling across the floor. Nora stood in front of him. I need to tell you something. Carter's eyes dropped to her hand before she realized she had placed it over her stomach. The world stopped moving through his face. Nora. She smiled, though tears had already risen. I'm pregnant. He did not speak. For once, Carter Westbrook had no mask. No answer, no power strong enough to organize the moment. He crossed the room like any sudden movement might wake him from a dream. Say it again. We're having a baby. He sank to his knees before her and pressed his forehead gently against her stomach. His hands held her hips with trembling care. Nora ran her fingers through his hair. The most feared man in Chicago whispered into the quiet room, I will make the world safer. Her eyes closed. For us, she said. He looked up at her. For us. Months later, the first cry of their daughter filled the mansion before dawn. Carter held the baby by the window while snow fell over the city. She was impossibly small against his chest, one tiny fist curled against the dark fabric of his shirt. He looked down at her with a tenderness so raw Nora had to lean against the doorway to bear it. The house was still guarded. The gates still locked. Black cars still came and went beneath the winter trees. The world had not become gentle, but Carter had. Not completely, not for everyone. For them, he was learning. He looked up and saw Nora watching. "Any regrets, Mrs. Westbrook?" Nora crossed the room and stood beside him. Their daughter stirred between them, warm and alive, a future breathing in the space where fear had once lived alone. Nora kissed the baby's forehead, then Carter's. Not one. Outside Chicago glittered beneath the snow. Inside the mansion no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a home built in the shadows lit by the people brave enough to stay.